What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we're going to be talking playoffs, the final rounds, and who we have in our grand finals. We also got our MVP, so we got some stuff to talk about today. Before I get into that, I'd like to thank everybody on YouTube. Thank you very much for all of the support you've been giving me. It's been greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. And if you're new out there on YouTube, please hit a like, hit a subscribe. Hit the alert bell. That way you'll know when I'm dropping Overwatch League content. I drop it anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week, depending on what's going on. Might be a little lighter in the next couple weeks. I have some episodes and stuff I want to do. And then we're going to talk about grand finals, but we'll talk about that at the end of the show. Kind of give you a roadmap of where I'm going and what we got going on for the next couple weeks. We do have a month or so in between because of logistics and travel and quarantining and when teams get to Korea. So we'll be talking about doing a little wrap-ups. We'll talk a little bit of all-star stuff when it comes around. It is something to talk about. It is what it is. It'll be fun, some of it, but we'll get to that later. So let's talk about the last weekend of the playoffs. So we got it down to, we are down to our final few teams. So let's start talking about the matches on Friday. We started off on Friday. We had the Florida Mayhem taking on the Atlanta Reign. The Mayhem looked decent in this one. They came out. They took care of business. I thought Atlanta was going to show up. Atlanta had a chance to win some fights and stuff here. They just, for some reason, Florida just owns them. And Florida came out and they did what they've been doing to certain teams in certain situations when they could play the way they want to play with that Reaper and Sombra and those kind of comps that they were running there. They looked pretty good doing it. And Atlanta, Florida has their number. They didn't look good. They didn't look terrible either. Florida 3-0s them, ending Atlanta season in disappointing fashion. Me, along with a lot of other people, I had them a lot higher. Who knows what happened with the circumstances? It's hard to say. Kind of a disappointing season for Atlanta. Yeah, they got into they had a win here and there. They looked decent here and there. I kind of thought they were going to make a run there in the beginning, but once we started whittling down to the better teams, they just weren't as good. Especially in this meta, they just did not perform. I mean, that's all you can say. Florida looked good in this. The second match in a row that they looked really good after the loss to the Valiant. They came out, did what they had to do, won the match, and moved on to the next round in the losers bracket. So the next match we had on Friday, we had the Valiant taking on the Washington Justice. And Washington continued to steamroll. They buried the Valiant eventually. The Valiant came out on the first map. They looked really good. They took it pretty decisively. Yeah, there was some back and forth and there were some good fights going on. But the Valiant looked really good in the first map. Looked like they had solved the Washington Justice there for a moment. But then Washington came out and they just continued to dominate on that comp that they're running. I said my piece on this. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, any of those kind of things with Washington. You guys all know how I feel about it. They look good all around. It's just a perfect storm of picking up decay, putting guys on heroes that they're good on, and guys like Stitch coming out of the woodwork, out of nowhere, and performing insanely good on anything he was playing. It was just a perfect storm of events. The Valiant couldn't stop them. The same story with they get their tank line going, you try and counter that, and Stitch is killing everybody. You try and take care of Stitch, and then the tanks destroy everybody. And their back line is doing a fantastic job. A lot of the things I said you needed to do to beat this team, it's really hard to do, but taking care of Arc and Aim God is really the primal thing that you need to do. And the Valiant were doing that to start, and then to Washington's credit, they adapted, they were peeling better. A lot of the things that they needed to do, and they took care of business. What else can you say? So that ends the Valiant season. The Valiant were fantastic all year. Look, I had them at the bottom, somewhere above Boston, around Boston, because I knew some of the pieces were good. Some of the pieces I wasn't sure of, and I just didn't think they were going to perform. Packing 10 did a wonderful job with this team. They performed above and beyond what 90% of the people thought, minus the people on the team and Custa. my hat's off to them. They beat my team and infuriated me at least 3 or 4 times this year. So I got to give them props. Fantastic year. Washington moves on. Okay, so 2 teams down. Now let's move to APAC, where on Saturday we had 2 matches. We had the losers bracket match between New York and Guangzhou. New York comes out. I feel bad for Guangzhou. These guys were good all year long, and they just could not grasp this meta at all. New York just tore them apart. It really pains me to see Guangzhou go out this way. I really would have liked to have seen what they could have done in a regular meta, but you know what? It is what it is, and they just didn't have it. They couldn't get the comps right. They just underperformed. Whatever you want to say, they just did not look good. New York came out, did their thing. They have flaws, and we'll get to this later. They did what they had to do to win, and they basically took care of a team that was lost in the meta. So it gave New York a chance to build on what they were working on earlier in the couple weeks before, trying to get themselves set up. They looked pretty good. I was pretty confident that they would be winning this game just because at this point, obviously not when I did my brackets. Guangzhou, I thought was going to go to the finals with Shanghai. You don't know how that team's going to grasp the meta. You look at the players, you're like, all right, yeah, this could happen, this could happen. These guys are good on these heroes, that kind of thing. Same thing in NA. A lot of things happened over there, too. The Washington Perfect Storm, teams that you thought would be decent, not doing anything decent-ish, like Houston. New York took advantage of the situation. They look like old New York, again, just doing things that they do well. Guys like SBB, like and Mono and Jonak, just performing well. Let's talk about the next match, the APAC final between the Shanghai Dragons and the Seoul Dynasty. This was a fantastic match. Seoul has gotten a grasp on this meta. Shanghai, a little shaky, I'm not going to lie. They did not look their finest in this match and in the prior matches that they played too. They were better than New York. And they didn't look the greatest beating New York, but they came into this match ready to go. So did Seoul. Seoul has been on a run. They are playing, they beat Hangzhou and Guangzhou. They tore them apart. They have a grasp on this meta, and they have the players that have the experience in these situations too. And once again, I know you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about this guy, but Prophet came to play. That guy, when he has the money on the table, he is elite. He is one of those special players, like, you can go down the list of all the greats in all the other sports. Jordan, Gretzky, Tom Brady, Derek Jeter. You can continue on and on about these guys. He is one of those guys, when the pressure's on, he's cool, he's calm, and he just takes over. And it's one of the things that during the regular season, I keep saying about this team. I don't know when or if it's going to bite him in the ass right now, but it's that 80s Jordan, you're waiting for him to do something. And in those regular season games, when he's feeling stuff out, he's not doing as much, or he's doing a lot and you're not doing enough. It just didn't click. Now we have this meta where you have him playing on his comfort picks, and some picks that you didn't realize, like him pulling out Ash and stuff like that. And then you have Gesture pulling out the Roadhog, doing really, really well. Creative playing fantastic. And also Marvel playing, they're doing the pig's feet, I guess we're calling it, with Sigma and Roadhog. That's working really, really well. Fitz is playing out of his mind. You have guys that are playing better than they played all year. It's much like Washington without all of the backstory and the nonsense. They had that guy. In Prophet. He was already on the team. They had their decay. And you have guys performing like Fitz and Gesture and Marvel helping out Prophet. They're going to be tough. They came out in this match and they looked miles better than Shanghai to start. Shanghai, though, being the team that they are, I don't know how many times I can say that I was wrong about this team when this season started. Watching this team play and they're kind of like San Francisco and Philly combined. They have the player names and the player level of Philly, and they have the brains of San Francisco, which makes them scary. They lost the first map. We went a little back and forth in this. And then you have guys like Fleta take over and Fearless start to play on top of his game. You know, Lee Jae-gong didn't have the greatest game to start. They were focusing on him. He picks up his game. You have guys performing in their way that they've been coached by Moon, who we'll talk about Coach of the Year and stuff like that later on. There's a lot of guys to talk about in that too. And if you don't think it matters, it matters. Look at the teams that are in here. I think Seoul is the one exception, although their coaching has picked it up. But you look at the teams that are in the final. Philly, San Francisco, Shanghai. 3 teams with 3 of the best coaching staffs in the league. Then you had other teams like the Valiant, Mayhem. Great coaching staffs. Atlanta, really good coaching staff. There's no shortage of coaching in these final rounds. The end outcome is the players have to take this to the next level. And that's the thing with Shanghai. They do that. They didn't look great, but eventually they won out because they could outplay and outsmart the Seoul Dynasty. That is one of their biggest strengths. Add that with the star power and the level of these players right now. Very scary team. Now, Seoul loses this match, but they're not done. They go down into we'll talk about that in a minute after we talk about NA. They go down to the losers bracket and they have to face New York. So let's hop back over to NA. So on Saturday in NA, we had the Florida Mayhem taking on the Washington Justice, and then the big match to go to the finals, we had San Francisco taking on Philadelphia. Now, the first match was not really a contest at all. Washington dominated the Mayhem 3-0. And you could tell the way this match was going from the start. Yeah, Florida picked up one of the segments on the first map on Ilios, which was their pick. But you could see that they were outmatched by the Washington Justice in this match. They just did not. The Reaper Sombra comps weren't working. They switched over to a Genji. End outcome, they got buried. And a lot of people are saying, well, you know, San Francisco mirrored it. San Francisco had the players to mirror it. Florida did not. They didn't have someone to run Zarya alongside of a Roadhog. Yeah, you could have taken BQB and put him in on Zarya or Yaki or something like that. But you don't have the players to perform a comp, and it just, they did what they could do. And it wasn't much, and you know they gave it their all. They tried really hard, and as a Mayhem fan, I cannot complain about this season. They went above and beyond my expectations. They have a bright future. They looked really good all the way through. They had struggles early on. Once they got Kuki's system down and into his coaching philosophy and the way they performed from before the Melee all the way until now, outside of losing to the Valiant, they have looked really, really good. You know, this team had a great year. They just ran into a team that had everything going for it, meta, etc., all the things, players, however you want to put it. They lost this match, but all in all, I got to say it was a great season. And I'm looking forward to next year to see what happens, off season, all that kind of stuff. I'm looking forward to this. But the Justice beat them. They move on into the losers bracket final. Now let's talk about the big match of the weekend. Well, in NA, we had to go to the grand finals. We had the San Francisco Shock taking on the Fusion. The Shock were the story in this one. They came out, it looked like it was going to be a burner of a match. It pretty much was. I mean, it was not a terrible match whatsoever. The Shock ended up coming out on top 3-1. Every map was pretty close. We had a Hollywood map where San Francisco gets full held. Philadelphia only gets a point on that. It was well played by both sides. These are the two best teams in NA. going at it. The meta has worked in a way to where they kind of even them out a little bit. Yeah, you could say San Francisco had a little less of a advantage against them for a change. Philadelphia, I thought Philadelphia was the best team coming in just by the way they played and performed in the last couple of matches. But San Francisco, much like Shanghai, did the things they needed to do to win this match. Philadelphia played really well. I'm not going to deny that. I picked them to go to beat San Francisco in this match. I thought they were going to handle them quite easily. But that's on me for doubting San Francisco being able to come and play. End result of this, we get a really good match between San Francisco and Philly to go to the grand finals, and San Francisco takes it 3-1. They're headed to Korea. Philadelphia had to play on Sunday, which we're going to talk about right now. We're going to talk about that while we're on it, and then we'll jump to APAC and then wrap up the episode. But Philadelphia had one more match, and they were facing the Washington Justice, the juggernaut that they are. They came into this match. They were ready. It felt like they wanted to be the savior for the grand finals in this and just take out the Justice. And they were mad that they lost to the Shock again. And I think it showed. They were focused. They played insanely good. They did not give the Justice a chance to breathe. One of the things with the Justice is they're running this comp and that comp alone. And if they're getting buried, they can't really switch out Decay onto something else. In the tank role, it just doesn't work out. And Philadelphia played their best game, I think, in this match against the team that was the hottest in the league. Minus, you can maybe say Seoul. Yes, San Francisco's played really well, too. They took care of the Justice like everybody wanted them to, except for Justice fans. Sorry, guys. They exposed them. They took care of business. The Justice, they had a great tournament. All the things came together for them. I'm not going to get into all the other things that went on around this. We've already talked about that. Everyone else has talked about that. I said my piece on it. The future, this team looks, like it could do something. Yeah, this was a perfect storm meta, like I've been saying, but if they resign Decay and they keep these other guys on this team, they all were, like I've said in the past too, they have guys that won championships and are great. And if you get them in the right situation, they're going to perform. And they did. The rest of the year, they did not do so great. But this is a positive step moving forward for this franchise. Now, if they could sign Decay, that's another story. I don't know what's going to happen with that. We'll see. But Philadelphia moves on, so we have our NA side set. We have the two teams that pretty much everybody expected to going to the grand finals. We have San Francisco and Philadelphia. And then we have one final match to talk about, and that's the APAC Losers Bracket Final, where we had Seoul, who lost a really tough match to Shanghai, going down to play the New York Excelsior, who also met their demise with the Shanghai Dragons that ended up in the bottom, took care of Guangzhou. Seoul did what they've been doing the whole tournament. They came in there, and they took care of business. New York just could not handle it. And it's a thing with New York, and I know a lot of people have been talking about what should New York do. Look, this season, like the other two before it, ended in disappointing fashion. This team, since the inception of the league, has been the most consistent team in the regular season. It gets to playoff time, and they fail. This was not a choke job. This isn't the Monty holding up the sign, the universal choking sign, the LW blue thing, all that. I believe Wolf even said that. And I was thinking the same thing. They didn't choke this one away. This was just being outclassed, outplayed, and destroyed. There was no choking. There was no yeet grav situation in this. They weren't ready for double snipers like in the season one. They couldn't handle anything besides monkey goats or somber goats in season 2. Unfortunately, my prediction of them going to the grand finals did not happen. I thought they looked great. I thought they were rising above all of the stereotypes of this team and all of the things, but they faced a team that was not having any of it. They got smoked by Seoul. There's no other way to put it. And they have work to do in the offseason. I think they need to revamp their whole roster, minus a couple of components like Jonak and maybe Onimo. You could make a argument for a couple other guys, but that's a discussion for another day. Right now, we have our grand final set. The Seoul Dynasty looked great in this. They did what they've been doing. Gesture, Prophet, and the whole cast of characters that we talked about in the last game, just doing what they do. They rolled over New York, and now we have our final four. We have the Philadelphia Fusion and San Francisco Shock coming out of NA, and then we have the Seoul Dynasty and the Shanghai Dragons coming out of APAC. This is going to be great, guys. I think this is, there maybe you could have swayed me with Guangzhou or maybe another team coming out of APAC, but I think this is going to be good. Guangzhou, Hangzhou, and Seoul are kind of on the same level. New York maybe in there too. New York in there too, I guess. My early impression is that this is going to be a very competitive final. It's going to be down to, you got 3 of the 4 best teams in the league, the top 3 right now. And Seoul, who should have been performing this way all the way through the season, hitting their peak right now. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be fantastic. I cannot wait for it to happen, but we got to wait 4 weeks. One final thing before we head out for this episode. We got our MVP. That is Fleta. Well deserved. He was my pick. I thought he was fantastic all year. His career has been, a storied career. We have the stat named after him, the Fleta deadlift. He did all kinds of different things for this team, and he is so diverse. One of the best players ever in Overwatch. He's up there with the Prophets and those guys like that. And this year, he was diverse. He played hit scan, projectile. You don't get too many guys that cross the lines. He is one of, if not the key reason why the Shanghai Dragons are where they are. I mean, you could go back and check out all the things I had to say about him on my MVP episode. But this year, I don't think there was anyone more deserving. All the candidates were great. I thought all of them had a viable argument to be the MVP, but Fleta stood out the most to me, and he is our league MVP. Congrats to him. Fantastic year for him and the Dragons, and we'll see more of him coming up in the grand finals, probably doing what he's been doing all year, and that's just owning everybody. So congrats to him again. And before I end this one, just a little roadmap. I'm going to talk a little bit about All-Stars. Not going to dive too deep into that. Maybe a little preview of the Widow 1v1. Talk about the Talent Showdown beforehand. Do a little wrap-up. I think they're doing 2 of them. One for APAC, one for NA. They're fun. We'll talk a little bit about it. But I'm going to start doing some team reviews of their season. We'll start from the bottom and work our way up, obviously, into the top 4. Probably not going to get there in that time frame, but we'll probably start getting into the playoff teams ish, depending. Probably do a couple teams an episode, and then obviously we'll start moving into grand finals talk. That's going to take up a lot of time. We'll have a few episodes on that, break down the teams, what they need to do to win, talk about, get into discussions if the meta shifts. These guys have had a couple weeks. How are the NA teams preparing? A lot of questions that need to be answered coming up for the grand finals. And then, of course, I'll do my preview, give you my picks. We'll talk about this quite a bit, I'm sure, for that entire week. And then settle in and watch, hopefully, a fantastic finals. But that's going to do it today, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. Everybody out there on YouTube, thank you for all your support once again. Greatly appreciated. All the likes, subscribes, conversations we've been having here or elsewhere on Twitter. Thank you very much. All my socials are down there in description. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody have a good rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you on the next one.